It wasn't shouted. It wasn't dramatic. But it hit like a thunderclap across the Formula One world. David Coulthard, a former F1 driver turned respected pundit, dropped a quiet but brutal truth about Lewis Hamilton's recent performance. No screaming headlines, no clickbait, just 7 words. Lewis looks like he's lost the spark. That single line, delivered in his usual calm, analytical tone, cut through all the noise after the Spanish Grand Prix. It wasn't just another opinion. It was a reflection from someone who's been behind the wheel, someone who knows exactly what it means when a driver starts to fade. And now the question everyone's afraid to ask is floating in the air. Was this just one off weekend for Lewis, or are we witnessing the slow unravelling of a 7-time world champion? Is the fire that once made Hamilton untouchable starting to flicker out? In a sport where milliseconds matter and confidence is everything, Coulthard's comment didn't just raise eyebrows, it raised alarms. Coulthard didn't need to raise his voice or use harsh words. In fact, that's what made his comment so powerful. In the high-pressure world of Formula One, where criticism often comes fast and loud, his quiet observation landed like a sledgehammer. For a man like Lewis Hamilton, who's faced every kind of media storm and still come out stronger, this was different. Coulthard wasn't attacking him. He was diagnosing something deeper, something more worrying. And coming from a former driver, someone who understands the mental and physical demands of elite racing, it carried serious weight. When Coulthard described Lewis as punch-drunk, it wasn't just a dramatic phrase. It meant Lewis looked like a fighter who's taken too many hits, still standing, but not quite steady. In Formula One, where mental pressure is constant and even a fraction of doubt can slow you down, that kind of observation matters. The media reaction didn't explode into chaos, but among experts and fans, it started a serious conversation. Was Hamilton simply tired? Or was he starting to show cracks under the weight of expectations, underperforming machinery, and a team that still feels unfamiliar? Coming into the Spanish Grand Prix, there was a quiet sense of hope building around Lewis Hamilton. For the first time in a long while, it felt like things might finally be clicking. He had just outqualified Charles Leclerc for only the 2nd time in a Grand Prix this season. A small but meaningful victory that had everyone paying attention. Ferrari had brought some fresh upgrades to the SF25, and early signs pointed to progress. Hamilton looked sharper, more in control, and more confident. After so many races spent trying to adapt to a car that never seemed to suit him, he finally had a setup that worked. His pace was real. It wasn't gifted by weather or chance. It was earned, clean, and direct. In the paddock, there was a buzz. Whispers that maybe, just maybe, this was the weekend things would turn around. Hamilton was aiming for a podium, not just surviving the midfield. It brought back flashes of his sprint win in China, another moment that had briefly reignited belief in his Ferrari journey. Those were the highlights in an otherwise frustrating season. Now, in Spain, the momentum seemed real again. The energy in his garage was different, his body language more focused. Everything was lined up for a potential breakthrough. But in Formula One, good omens can vanish as fast as they appear. And what started as a promising weekend was about to take a sharp and painful turn. But then came race day, and everything started to fall apart. The moment the lights went out, the promise of a comeback faded. Hamilton's Ferrari simply didn't have the bite. The car felt sluggish, especially through the corners. There was no sharpness, no real grip, no acceleration on the straights. While Charles Leclerc quickly found a rhythm and started climbing, Lewis was left struggling with a machine that just wouldn't respond. The radio messages told the story, not with shouting or panic, but with calm frustration. You could hear it in his voice, a quiet desperation. He was asking questions, searching for answers, but getting no relief. Something was clearly wrong, and he felt it in every lap. Then came the moment that really stung. Ferrari told Hamilton to move aside and let Leclerc through. It was a standard strategy call on paper, but for Lewis, it was something more. Just a day earlier, he had outqualified his teammate. Now he was being asked to step aside, not because of a mistake, but because the team saw more pace in the other car. That call hit deeper than any overtake ever could. By the end of the race, Lewis didn't sound angry. He sounded drained. In his interviews, there was no fire, no excuses, just a flat, tired tone. "It just wasn't a great day," he said. And those words, delivered so quietly, said more than any headline could. As the checkered flag waved and Hamilton crossed the line in sixth, the silence from him was quickly replaced by a storm outside the garage. Social media lit up almost instantly. Fans who had been rooting for a Ferrari redemption were left confused and disappointed. On Twitter, Hamilton and Ferrari strategy started trending within minutes. Some users posted screenshots of the radio message, calling it the most heartbreaking moment of the weekend. Others questioned if Ferrari had already given up on him. "You don't ask a 7-time world champion to move aside unless something's really broken," one fan tweeted, and that sentiment echoed far and wide. F1 journalists added to the noise. In post-race columns, words like fractured, lost, and disconnected began to appear. Some praised Hamilton's composure despite the mess. Others asked whether this quiet collapse signalled something deeper. Even a few rival team insiders hinted at unrest within Ferrari's walls. One unnamed source reportedly said, "It looks like they don't know how to handle Hamilton or his car." Suddenly, it wasn't just a disappointing finish. It became a talking point across the paddock, on podcasts, in headlines, and all over YouTube. The Spanish Grand Prix had ended, but the conversation around it had just begun. Behind the scenes, the hardest battle might not have been on the track, but inside Hamilton's mind. His voice during and after the race carried a heavy weight, a quiet resignation that was hard to ignore. This wasn't the fighting spirit fans were used to hearing. Instead, it sounded like cracks were beginning to show in his confidence. Switching from Mercedes to Ferrari is no easy task. The cars are completely different, and adapting takes time, patience, and mental strength. But this season, the mental toll has been clear. Hamilton's struggles aren't just about speed or setup. They're about finding his rhythm again in a new environment that doesn't yet feel like home. What made the moment even more striking was what he said after the race. "It's probably just me." Those words reveal a man questioning himself, wondering if the problems are his own and not just the car's. In a sport where confidence can be the difference between winning and losing, that doubt is dangerous. The mental pressure is enormous, and for a driver who's used to winning, this adjustment period feels like a heavy weight on his shoulders. It's a reminder that behind every helmet is a human being dealing with challenges we often don't see. Adding to the uncertainty, Ferrari's team principal Fred Vasseur spoke after the race and hinted at a technical problem that affected only Hamilton's car. He didn't give many details, but it was clear this wasn't just about driving mistakes or strategy. Something in the SF25 wasn't working right for Lewis, especially in the later stages of the race. That raised many questions for fans and experts alike. Why would one car have an issue while the other stayed strong? What exactly was going wrong under the hood? Part of the answer lies in the big differences in car design and how each driver uses their machine. Hamilton, known for his smooth, precise style, is still adjusting to Ferrari's engineering philosophy. The SF25 is built very differently from the cars he drove at Mercedes. It demands a different approach, one that requires adapting to new handling, tyre wear, and balance. This mismatch can cause problems on race day, especially when small issues become bigger under pressure. The technical side of Formula One is complicated, and when a car doesn't suit a driver's style, it can quickly lead to frustration and lost performance. For Hamilton and Ferrari, this gap between driver and machine is a key piece of the puzzle in understanding their current struggles. While Hamilton wrestled with his car and confidence, Charles Leclerc was quietly building momentum. Leclerc's results this season have been strong and consistent, and his confidence behind the wheel shows. He's adapted well to the SF25, making the most of the upgrades and extracting performance where Hamilton still struggles. This growing performance gap is becoming impossible to ignore. What was expected to be a close fight between teammates is starting to look very different. Leclerc is clearly taking the lead, while Hamilton seems unsettled and searching for answers. This divide has major implications for Ferrari's team dynamics. When one driver feels comfortable and confident, and the other is struggling to keep up, tensions can rise. Leclerc is now seen by many as the clear team leader, the driver Ferrari will back to fight for the championship. Meanwhile, Hamilton's position feels less certain. This situation isn't just about lap times. It affects how the team makes decisions and manages race strategy. Rivalries within a team are nothing new in Formula One, but when the balance tips this much, it raises tough questions about the future of both drivers and the team's overall direction. For Ferrari fans, this internal battle is becoming one of the most important stories of the 2025 season. Looking at the bigger picture, this season was never just about winning races or adding trophies. For Lewis Hamilton, moving to Ferrari was supposed to be a defining moment, an opportunity to build a new legacy, to prove that his greatness could continue outside of Mercedes. But now, after a string of struggles and setbacks, many are starting to ask if that move was the right choice. Is Hamilton's switch to Ferrari turning into a mistake that could cloud the final chapters of his career? Or is this simply the price of change, a temporary dip before a resurgence? The truth is, it's too early to write off one of Formula One's greatest champions. Hamilton's talent, experience, and resilience have helped him bounce back from setbacks before. But the challenge he faces now is different. He's not just racing against other drivers, he's racing against a complex mix of machinery, team politics, and his own doubts. The question is whether he can find that spark again before the season slips away. Formula One fans will be watching closely, because if Hamilton can turn this around, it won't just be a comeback, it will be a story for the ages.